It's a pop-off.
And so this is Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour number 84. It is January 6th. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your host.
Woodturners Coffee Hour is sponsored by Lancaster Area Woodturners.
And I'm also the club treasurer. For anybody who hasn't yet paid their dues, you can do that by PayPal to me or mail a check. Let me see. We have a bunch of visitors here today from various other clubs. The word gets around about people like what we're doing here and they want to check it out. And their visitors are welcome. However, we would like you visitors to show your faces if you can. It's uncomfortable when people come in with just labels on their screens and we can't see them. And you're welcome to participate as a visitor as well. You don't need to be a member of Lancaster Woodturners to participate in our weekly coffee hour. As for other ground rules, please turn your phone off. When your wife comes to talk to you, please mute yourself so we don't have to hear your argument. Likewise, if you go to the bathroom and flush the toilet, please mute yourself. We don't need to hear that either. When we get to the show and tell moment, which we're going to do here today, we're going to use raise hand. So if you don't know where raise hand is, look down at the bottom of your screen for the reactions tab. The first item on that tab is raise hand. And the virtue of raise hand is when you click that, because you want to show something, you pop up to the upper left of my screen. So when everybody who wants to share uses raise hand, I see you all in a row and it's easy to go down the list. I don't have to make a pencil list or pay attention to all of that. So that's the request here today. How many of you saw the video that we showed at the Lancaster Club meeting the other night, the Show Us Your Stash video? Have a lot of you seen that? Yeah. Okay. I want to post that on the AAW website, and I felt compelled last night to make a wee edit in it. I took out the first series, very first minute and a half, which showed Doug and Bob Hollister jerking logs around with a front end loader. It was fun. It was fun to be there to shoot. It was fun to be there. It was fun to see. It worked out pretty well. But it also seems like the kind of crazy stuff that people go nuts about on the AAW side, and I think they're right. So I took that scene out. What do you guys who saw it think? Should I have left that in? No comments?
Doug here, by the way. I was in complete support of taking it out. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it should be removed also, John.
I would say take it out because take it out because I think that they do go nuts. I had one they were going to put on the site about riving. I was wearing steel chaps, a hard hat, safety glasses with side shields, and a screen face shield, and they said I didn't have the right safety equipment on.
Yeah, well, I know when I post a how-to video, or when I do a how-to video, since most of the older guys I know wear industrial glasses with side shields rather than full face shields, so I just make sure I don't show their faces, and the argument goes away. I think your guys are right. I did take that scene out. If you were to look at that video again, you would find it's not there. So enough of that, unless there's any other comments on that video. It was Bowman's idea to compile a Show Us Your Stash video from the work we did earlier in the COVID era. We actually visited 10 shops for that video. Any other comments on it?
Thank you, John. That was a good idea. We need to see each other's shops, I think. I would welcome the day when we could actually visit each other's shops, but boy, that seems like a distant venture.
Yeah, maybe sooner than you think. Yeah. Well, okay. Who'd like to show work this morning? Use raise hand if you wouldn't mind, so I get a nice queue going. I see Duxbury. I know Mike Peace has stuff. I know Mike. Okay, good. That's what we like. Yeah.
Oh, see Duxbury.
A whole nice string of raise hands. Okay. You can add raise hand to the queue anytime, and I'm just going to work through the queue. Let's see, the screen just flashed around quite dramatically. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 28, and 7, 35, 37, it looks like. Yeah, I think that's our high point, 37. Once again, for those of you who have clicked in and we're not showing your faces, we'd rather you did, but you can stay if you don't. Any other questions before we start going around?
John, go ahead and add 2 to your count because I've got 3 here with total in my shop.
Okay. That makes it, there's 41 people watching here today. And we usually get about anywhere between 50 and 200 views for these, so they're getting around.
John, I got a technical question.
Yeah.
Do you using a switcher do you need to spotlight people for them to share, or can they just share without being spotlighted?
They can share without being spotlighted, but if I spotlight them when they share, then their face stays beside their share. As opposed to if I don't spotlight them, then every guy who coughs pops up as in the window beside the share. So I have to remember to spotlight them and then take the spotlight off. Doug helps me with that.
Guys just need to stay muted and not cough.
Duxbury, what do you got today?
Sure, let me see here. Can I do a screen share?
Sure can. There you go.
Oh,
Gotcha.
a few weeks ago, I showed this. This is a poplar bowl with a mahogany flange around the outside. It's cut in half and then the 2 halves put together.
Okay.
From that, rather than glue the 2 halves together, I showed before the thing being hinged. So I could come up with 2 or 3 different ways of showing this. Okay, can you see that now?
Sure can.
Yeah.
Okay, now from here, the one way went to hinge, so I could show different ways of doing this. The other way is to cut the piece in half and glue it together like it's supposed to be. This is a madrone split bowl with the top surface burned.
Now, a thing I notice in that, Jim, is at the seam, you get an innie, and that is inevitable with sanding unless you make a flange there that you later sand off.
Oh, I see. Okay. I actually use that. Well, you can hardly see it. Anyway, I actually use that because the glue comes up there and I clamp it. But okay. And they actually sand inside there, huh?
Yeah.
That sounds like a rough way to go. But anyway, that's another way of doing it. It was kind of interesting. The madrone came from Dale Larson in Portland. Long story on that. But anyway, it was a madrone, gorgeous piece of wood.
It's a beautiful piece of wood, is right.
Anyway, this is the bottom of it. It just got a flat for the bottom. And then I made another one out of walnut. It's the side views. These are interesting. People love them, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Now, you remember, this is the stuff that Stephen Hogman basically originated back in the 70s. And an awful lot of us have fooled around with it since, but nobody's done it better than he did, I don't think.
Well, this first one, this one is an ununiform side thickness, wall thickness. And some people like that. And then I did another one, this walnut one is a uniform thickness. And got some neat ways of doing this. I'll show a system next week that I've got a stack of these things I can put together. So anyway.
Very cool.
And that's the bottom of it. And here's what it looks like on the lathe. That's the inside. That's the inside being turned. Right? When you flip it over, you have to remember what the inside looked like because it goes against a flat plate and you can't see what's going on. Anyway,
that's got to be difficult to get that wall thickness. How do you do that?
You got to date. You got to date. I can't tell you that in a few minutes.
Templates would help.
You use templates and use drawings and whatever. all this stuff is drawn. I know what this is going to be. The dimple in the middle is because it's a screw chuck, and the screw is underneath that. The rest of this is just a configuration. By the way, if you ever do this, don't ever stick your finger in there with sandpaper, ever. I put a 3/8 dowel in here with sandpaper on the end, and if you get in the right configuration, one of those deep grooves, it'll grab that and bust the dowel off just as quick as you can imagine. Don't ever stick your finger in there. It'll tear your finger off.
Any more questions for Duxbury?
I have a question. How do you cut those in half and get a straight line?
On the bandsaw.
Okay.
I've got a bandsaw sled that I actually can put the first part against the blade, and I know where it's going to come out on the other side, and just go slow and cut it right in half. It cuts perfectly in half. But I have a sled for the bandsaw. So.
Yeah, I think.
Have you ever tried a paper joint?
Oh. You'd have to have the paper joint in this piece. It probably could be done. I wouldn't do that because the screw chuck would be right in the paper joint.
Right.
And that'd be a little scary.
You're not going to notice the loss of the kerf in a thing like this either.
No.
I think if you put it on a sled, that ought to go pretty straight. You ought to be able to align that up and keep it.
Especially if you take your time. Don't force it. As soon as you force this, a bandsaw blade, you bend the blade and it wanders. If you take
One thing I do on a bandsaw a lot of times is use those hand clamps, those wooden clamps with the 2 screws, especially on small pieces. I'll clamp them on and you can run them across the bandsaw pretty accurately.
Well, this isn't cut up straight. This is cut laying down on its face. You don't need any clamps. You can just push it through.
The other thing you can do with these when it's a complicated surface is tack a piece of 1-inch plywood onto it or spot glue it on and draw your line on that. Then you don't have to worry about drawing a line on a curved surface.
Yeah. But it cuts real nice on a bandsaw. But
yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Any other comments for Jim before I move on? No. Okay. Kathy Gower.
Thanks for sharing. That's really a good one. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that challenge and try to make something similar to that.
Okay.
Good luck.
Good luck. Kathy Gower, what do you got?
I have a friend that just opened a jewelry store, and when she was cleaning out the store and getting things ready to open, she found a lot of mismatched blue willow containers, and she had lids that didn't have bottoms. So I said, well, let me take one of those and see. And so I just took a disposed of lid that didn't have a bottom and turned the jar to fit onto the lid. So I thought, well, that just goes to show you nothing's trash.
How are you holding that lid in there?
I just did it out to fit I measured it with the dimensions of the lid and just did it to fit, and it fits very snugly.
Have like a rubber ring? Is that what it is?
There's not a rubber ring. I just turned it tight enough that it stays in there.
Now, do you think any wood movement might break that porcelain?
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe in a year you'll know.
Maybe. But so far, so good.
Check back next year. We'll see how it looks.
I'll enjoy it for a year then.
Kathy's a new learner, and she's gotten a long, long way in this first year, I think.
Thank you.
It's much more likely that the wood is going to crack before the porcelain because they're under compression. So anyway,
Kathy, my wife's
it looks very
potter.
nice.
My wife's
I'll
a
let
potter.
you know in a year.
Yeah, my wife's a potter, and I do the reverse. She makes the pot, and I try to turn the wood top. to sit on it, because if you're potter, you know, making tops for your containers is a challenge.
Always. Thank you, Kathy. Any other questions for Kathy or comments? Okay, I'm going to move on. Ray, what do you got?
Thank you, John. We've been showing ornaments. I just wanted to show these. This is a little Santa or a snowman and another snowman. And I may have shown this before, but these are fun to make. They're quick. People, the fact that the bark is down the side, you know, we do this and think nothing of it, but this is really small. You get a lot of these out of a branch, you know, you give them away. And, but they come out interesting, and you know how people are. We make something round out of something square. They think it's magic. So, but that's it. Thank you.
Hey, that was quick. Any questions for Ray? Comments for Ray? Okay.
You're right about the little pieces. People do like those little bowls.
They do. They're easy to make too. Quick. How long do you think you have in one of those, Ray?
10 minutes.
I was going to say 10, 15 minutes.
My daughter and granddaughter scarfed mine up. I had a whole pile of old stuff from the early days, and it disappeared one time they were here visiting, to my luck. Yep.
Bruce Lamb, what do you got?
So in the December issue of the Journal of AAW, on the back cover, there was a really nice set of dolls done by Elias Severa. I don't know if others have had the opportunity to see him, but he is an amazing turner. And I still relish the day I spent with him maybe 5 years ago. So anyway, I took a shot at one of these dolls.
Oh, very cool.
And that's my first effort. And I think there's a lot of variations you can do on this quite simply. I'm probably going to make a family of these.
Oh, wait a minute. That's how many centers did you turn that on?
3.
And how far apart were they?
I did this by angling the piece in the chuck. So it was really quite simple to do. The head and the neck are turned on the regular center as well as the base. And then I pull the center forward in the chuck to do the top, and then 180 degrees apart to do, then the middle as well, and then 180 degrees back to do the bottom here. So it's 3 real centers, but it's not that difficult. And the hat obviously is a separate piece, but otherwise it's 2 pieces. It's the doll and the hat. And lots of options exist for the hat as well. Hat turned out to be the easier part of the construction, but I enjoyed it. It was a really fun thing to do. He's got a whole, if you just look on the back cover of that December issue, you'll see 4 or 5 of them, I think. And some of them he's painted and done some really great work, but I think it's just a neat concept with a very simple multi-axis turning.
What wood is that?
The doll is cherry and the hat is olive. It's about 6 inches tall.
Questions for Bruce?
Love it. Did you say the hat is turned separate?
Yes.
Okay. I was just going to say, you are really magical if you turned that while it was still on the lathe. So.
Yeah, I think that would be magical. I think the hat should have a bigger undercut. I put a slight undercut on it this time. I think I'll definitely go for a larger undercut of the hat next time. And you can certainly play with the shape of the hat as well.
You could.
Very nice. I like the shape of that. That's good.
Very nice.
Thank
Do you use, Bruce, do you use tailstock support when you have it canted in the chuck?
I don't in this case, and being about 6 inches long, I'd make an extra long tenon on the base, so I've got room so that it's fully supported in there. And I haven't had any problems. Just take it slow. But it's not that far off axis that it's a real problem. And I usually use a bowl gouge when I start, when it's really off, until I get close to center, and then I may use a spindle gouge when I'm certainly through the rough part of it.
That's a cute piece.
What RPM are you turning at? Keep that apart.
Probably not that fast. I probably, when I go off axis, probably between 800 to 1,000. I don't exceed 1,000 on it.
Okay.
Have any of you guys, specialists, or got one of those chucks that has a ball in it so you can move your piece off center completely? So you get 3 or 4 off centers, like a bugle or something?
A wobble chuck? Is that what you're talking about? I don't have one of those.
I was wondering if one of the guys that has 50 chucks has got one of those or not.
Blazik's the guy with 42 chucks. Do you have one, Bill? He's here somewhere, or he was. Yeah, there he is. Do you have one of the, Bill Blazik, do you have one of those offset chucks?
I have a couple of them, couple different ones.
Do they work really well?
Yes, they work fine.
Would you be willing to show a couple pieces you've made out of that so one day, Bill?
Maybe one day.
Have we done any demos for this?
No.
The neat part of those chucks is you can index them back to where your other position was. When you cock something in a chuck and turn it, you get a different axis. But if you want to go back to that, you'll never do it. With a calibrated chuck of any of those kind, once you learn how to use it, if ever, you can go back to that other center, any of the centers.
And you would want to do that, why?
Well, I don't know, if you ever did your third center and wish the second center was a little different, you could go back and reset it and come back to that setting exactly. But good luck learning it. I'll tell you, that's another world.
Actually, I can get pretty darn close with mine. I put an index mark on the chuck and the lathe, and then my lathe has digital indexing. So if I go through the center, I can get really close to where I was.
It sounds like something you'd never need, but once you start doing that, you'd get your third center or something and wish the first one was different or the second one, and you could just touch it up. But yeah, that's good luck on that.
When I think of the plywood discs and blocks setups we used to use to do that kind of stuff. Any other questions or comments on this kind of offset turning? That's very nice piece, Bruce.
Those chucks are heavily numbered so that you can repeat anything you set them at.
Okay. Is that it from you, Bruce?
Yep, that's all I have for today.
Okay. Bowman, you're next.
Well, I had my first experience in off-axis turning, also my first experience in turning a Peppermill. And the off-axis happened because, and you can guess, when I bored through this, my bore did not go straight through the middle. It came out, it went in off center and came out off center. So I said, I'm going to share screen because I want to show you what I did. Here's what I ended up making: a jam chuck, 1.5 inches, because that was the bore. What I did is turned a big long, 6-7 inches long jam chuck wrapped around this. If you guys knew George Rosenwasser, he brought, when he was still alive and member of the Harrisburg Club or the Susquehanna Club, he would bring these things from the operating room, the blue stuff, and I have piles of it. It's great stuff. I wrapped that around, forced it on, and then I turned each end to be round again. It made a weird shape, but that's the way it is. But now you see it's a little offset, and my dear wife, she was not so sure about it. But I tell you, it feels pretty good in the hand when you grab it.
It doesn't look like much of anything, though.
It's a little fat on the right when you're looking at it. It leans a little. I had to resand the bottom to make it sit level, but it was great fun. I had fun with it. And I have, by fact, I have, let me get rid of my share because I'm done with that. I have poured 2 more blanks. This has half epoxy and half maple, and I'm anxious to turn a pair of salt shakers and Peppermills. The first one I showed you was my experiment, my mock-up to make sure I knew what I'm doing. Ernie may have a suggestion or somebody how I get it to bore straight. I'm about to stick it on my drill press. I think I could get a straighter bore. If you guys got any ideas, I'm open to it because it was a little disappointing, but I'm a member of the No Funnel Club. So I said, I'm going to use it, even though it went crooked. So
Most folks that do Peppermills drill it from both ends.
I know. And that's what Ernie told in his video, but I didn't want to separate the head off until I was done. Yeah, it was my own mistake, probably. You're right. I should drill from both ends.
Well, I want to know how come your epoxy isn't blue?
Every time I go to pour epoxy now, I go, I can't make it blue. John doesn't understand blue. I actually wanted it a little transparent because I'm kind of hoping that I'll have a cavity in there where I can see the salt and see the peppercorns. Wouldn't that be cool? See, but I won't know until I turn it. So,
any other questions?
Jim, you had a picture a few slides ago that showed your jam chuck. I guess it was a 4x4 that you had turned a cone on the end, or a taper.
It was a 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. It's the same size as my blank. I just grabbed one out of the trash bin and turned it. Yes. What was your?
Why did you make it so long? I don't mean the part that goes inside. I mean the rectangular part. It appears to be about 8 inches long.
It was the piece I had, and I thought, why cut it down? I may need to make another jam chuck out of it. Yeah, good question, Barry. It might have
just seems you're inviting instability.
Oh, I'm learning to be gentle with my chisels, what it's teaching me. But you're right. I knew somebody would catch that. But sometimes I just approach things like a farmer, and if it works, I do it. So
when you drill those, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can hold the work in the chuck and you drill in the tailstock, or the other way around. For a lot of things, putting the drill in the headstock and pushing the piece with the tailstock from both ends, usually you'll get a straighter hole. However, theoretically, for gun drilling, you're better spinning the work than you are the drill. Another thing, if you're holding it in the chuck before you start to drill, you go in with the tip of a skew and put a little dimple in the middle to get the spur of the drill in, and you're starting out centered. Otherwise, you'll wander off center, and it just gets worse as you go.
Yeah.
Ernie, I think the other thing that I noticed, my lathe, when I slide the tailstock on the bed, it has some play left and right. And so I have to decide, and I want to check it this morning at the shop, what position that tailstock needs to be in when it's locked, or not when it's locked, but what position needs to be in when I slide it. I think part of the play is happening because it can wiggle like that.
Yeah, that's something you need to learn that for your own lathe, and becomes a habit of how to lock it in its best position, but you got to learn what it is.
Aren't there certain heads on drills that are self-centering as well? I mean, they're a bit more expensive and you have to get a longer one to go through the entire length of the piece, but do they not work fairly well as far as self-centering drills?
There used to be what was called a pod auger. I'll go get one in a second and hold it up, but they pretty much self-center. They're like a spoon bit on the end of a rod, but most twist drills and even Forstner bits will wander with grain.
The other thing I wondered about too, Ernie, is I had to use 3 different extensions because I don't have enough movement on the tailstock when I crank it. So I had to do two different extensions on the Forstner, and I suspect that added some play as well. They probably don't line up. Somebody mentioned in one of either this meeting or some other meeting, strong bore extended Forstners. Does anybody know about those?
It works great. It's made by Carter and they're wonderful.
Great. How long are they?
The bore itself is probably at least a good 12 inches.
Wow.
And then you still have the length of your Forstner build or drill bit.
Oh, it's not. So it's a separate extension.
Yeah, you use set screws to attach.
Well, I have a couple, mine are not stronghold, but I have a couple. One is 8 inches or something, another is 4. So I can get a good reach in, but I worried about them leaving too much play. So
you
Karen,
won't have
what
that
do you-
problem with this.
great.
Karen, do you have
Karen,
one?
what
you could show
diameters
us?
are they available in?
Yeah, I'll go get one.
Okay, cool. We'll go on while she does that.
Here-
unless there's other
Here's what a
questions.
pot auger looks like.
Ah, it's just a gouge. You just stuck a.
The spoon bit.
It's a spoon bit, exactly. And
Is
they
that what
used
you-
to make these that were like 3 feet long for lamps.
They work good too. And you can make a hole that's bigger inside than outside too. It's kind of a hollowing tool.
So what, Ernie, if you want to do a 1.5 inch drill, you what do you use that to guide it and then do it with the Forstner?
Yeah, these were mostly for running electrical wires, but a lot of times if you get a drill a center hole, all the rest of the drills will follow it. That's not true of Forstner bits. Also, Fish makes a special set for Peppermills that's goes for the one made in Denmark. And it's not cheap, it's $200, but it works very well.
Ernie, how different is that from a fingernail gouge?
It is significantly different. However, you can drill a pretty straight hole with a fingernail gouge. I've done it lots of times.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
And it stays pretty centered too, doesn't it? I see Karen's got something there to show us.
Well, there
John.
she is. Karen, I'm going to spotlight you so we can all see that.
This is the strong bore. It's 3 parts and you can see it's put together by set screws. The blue tape is just what I had measured and I have a Forstner bit in it.
So that's just basically a very rigid bit extender.
Yeah, and it's an M2 taper. So it's not like anything else is, going in. There's no play in it.
Nice.
Well, how thick is that? Because if you're drilling a small hole, you're gonna have a problem. If you want to drill like a 1/2 inch, you're stuck, right? Because it's wider than a 1/2 inch, right? The strong bore.
I'm gonna guess it's about a 1/2 inch.
With the set screws sticking out. That'll add a little extra to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm guessing it's a bit bigger than that. Yeah.
Yeah, with the screws sticking out, it's at least 3/4.
I don't feel so bad now. I think my boring stuff is pretty substantial. So
I'm going to move along unless there's more commentary on this.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about aligning the tailstock and the headstock. When I bought my Powermatic lathe, I'd heard a comment about the points don't line up. It wasn't on mine. Mine was okay. But one of the critical setups is make sure your lathe is level. And I said, you mean that cast iron bit on that Powermatic is going to twist? And sure enough, if you're not level, your points will not be lined up. So that's one of the key things, level your lathe. And then of course, if you have play in your tailstock, you really ought to try to shim that up or what have you, but start out with a good level bed before anything else.
Yeah, I think that's right.
mine was point to point when I first got it, and I haven't checked it recently. I guess I should give it some inspection in case it's shifted over time.
Yeah, worth doing.
John.
Okay.
John.
Oops, who's that?
Jeff.
Yeah.
I had some problem with drill bits twisting doing duck calls, and what I ended up doing was I bought some drill bits that are Morris taper. I've got a 1/2 inch and a 3/4 inch twist drill that's Morris taper, so it takes all the play out of the drill bit.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to Larry. Larry, I'm going to spotlight you.
Okay, hi. Yeah, so this is a simpler piece. It's just a 14-inch bowl from a piece of Claro walnut that I had. So I like to share my learning experiences, which usually mean mistakes, because I've had a few of them. So I was pretty pleased with the way this was coming out. I kind of liked the shape and the thickness, and everything was good. But because of the size of this, I had a pretty large tenon on the bottom I was using. Had my number 3 stronghold jewels out almost to the widest. And so it was time to put it on. I put it on my vacuum chuck, and I got it centered just perfectly. It was really nice. And the vacuum is holding. I pulled the tailstock away, and I'm cutting, and all of a sudden I noticed it started wobbling, which is obviously not a good thing. So I went through the process again. I got it centered on again. It was nice and tight. I start doing it again. All of a sudden it wobbles again, and I got a little crack I had to work with. But I was really mystified why'd that happen. And then finally, when I got it off and I held it up to the light, I could see, I don't know if you could see a little tiny, really tiny pinhole here, probably from a bug or a worm or something like that, that was so small I really didn't even see it. But when I held it up to the light, I could see there was a tiny opening there. And that was just enough to mess up my vacuum and create a situation that, you know, fortunately didn't get as bad as it could have. But so if you're using a vacuum chuck, hold your piece up to the light before you put it on. That's basically my observation.
Well, that's a very nice bowl, Larry. That's a
yeah, I like it.
Good bowl.
Nice job, Larry.
Ready for salad. Thanks.
You finished that with your water locks?
Yeah, I did. I got some good advice from John and Ron, I think, and I used your technique, John, of the using the
wet sanding with the water locks with Scotch-Brite.
Scotch-Brite pads.
Yeah.
While the water locks is wet, and rubbing it that way, and that really seemed to help.
That worked pretty well.
How many coats you put on?
Excuse me.
How many coats?
I probably did about 4, and I'm still trying. It's been about 2 weeks, so I think it's pretty well fully cured, ready to use.
Water locks looks like hell until you get 3 on. A lot of people, yeah,
but it's good stuff.
Yeah.
A comment for Larry. Did you do anything to? What did you do to put in the? You put anything in the hole then to fix the vacuum? Did you put an epoxy drop in it?
When it kind of messed up, and in order for me to get the rest of the tenon off, I knew, all right, I couldn't vacuum it anymore. So I had to kind of jam it against the chuck. And while I was doing that, it wound up, I thought I had enough thickness, and it pushed in and it formed a little crack right here in the bottom of the bowl. So then I had to take some CA glue and sawdust and patch it up. It all worked out pretty well, but as you can imagine, I was speaking some pretty nasty words when it cracked on me.
I've actually I've seen that situation where I've had a small hole in the bottom. I've just put a drop of epoxy glue into it, and that seals up the vacuum again. So you can't do it obviously immediately, but regardless.
Yeah, if I'd known before the fact, I would have. I'm going to be more careful with those little holes from now on.
Yeah.
Another trick I've used to fill in actually big gaps in bowls is if you take those packing peanuts that dissolve in water, you can take a piece of dowel rod and push them down and cram them into the hole and get a pretty good seal out of them. And then they wash out if you want to bring that defect back.
Nice tip.
Larry, That was just an opportunity to add some fun to the bowl. You should just cut the bottom out and put another piece of wood in it.
There you go. Another possibility.
What's the effect of an open grain wood using it on the vacuum chuck?
It'll fall off.
Well, since that was walnut, that's what I was wondering if that was an issue.
I don't think that was a problem at all. I think it was all because of the hole.
Yeah.
You know,
The vacuum,
3/16 of thickness here, so.
the vacuum gauge, Chuck should have a gauge on your vacuum pump someplace. And if you watch that, you can see it drop off to where it's not safe anymore. So
It does have a gauge, and I did notice that the number wasn't going up quite as high as I thought it should have been. You know, it was up around 15 or so. And it was pretty solid, but I was a little surprised that I wasn't seeing more movement on the gauge. So that should have been a signal to me.
Yeah.
I had that problem with walnut that I lost vacuum, and I wrapped cling film around the bowl on the outside and fixed it additionally with tape, and then the vacuum was better. So that might be a trick if you lose vacuum through the open grain wood, just to try to cover it on the outside with something that is removable easily. Yeah.
You can also finish the inside, give it a good coat of finish, to plug it up. But the problem with holding it up to the light is depends on the worm. Some worm poop is really strong and it holds vacuum. Others, you get about half done and it comes out.
Well, actually, I think that this hole, I mean, it really is no bigger than a tiny pinprick. But I don't think it went all the way through until I started removing part of the tenon. I think it was underneath the tenon, and then I kind of got to the other side where it came through. So it was like a conspiracy of a lot of different things going on at one time.
But as Ernie alluded to, there are some woods that are just so porous you can't vacuum them regardless. They just suck air all the way through until it's completely sealed. So anyway, thanks, Larry.
Okay, I'm going to go to Randy for a second, who's at the farm show and wants a few minutes.
Hey, good morning. We are here. This is our booth at the farm show, and we are getting ready to set up and bring the lathe in. We are just inside the Clay Street entrance. What you see there in yellow is the butter sculpture. And we are right on the intersection of 3 aisles. This is the one main aisle. This is the shorter aisle. And this is the other way on the aisle. So we are right on the aisle. So I hope we get a lot of traffic through here. On a normal farm show, the farm show has about 500,000 people visit. I don't know that they're going to get that many. But we are going to put on nice demonstrations for it. We do have a display case of items. We don't have it opened up yet. And we're just getting ready to bring in the lathe and get that set up and load the display case up. So I will see you all later, hopefully, and take care and have a happy new year.
Thank you, Randy. Now, for anybody who isn't not in the area, that's the Pennsylvania Farm Show in Harrisburg, and our sister club, the Susquehanna Turners, who are based in Harrisburg, do the turn tops and things for kids at the farm show every year. And this year they figure the ventilation and the masking and the distancing is safe enough, and they're going to do it. I myself am not going there, but Randy feels safe, so there you go.
Now you've had another first, a remote dial into Woodturners.
Yep. What do you got, Mike Peace?
Can you see that?
Beautiful work.
Yeah, I did a smaller complete set last year, and then I decided I wanted to do it again, but I didn't get around to it until after Christmas. But these are about 4.5 inches tall. I've got the other pieces, but I didn't get a picture of them. I made this one for a video where I was showing some glue technique, and I think that's probably worth mentioning. On these little parts, CA glue is too brittle for the hats and mostly these gifts. But if you put a little bit of wood glue with a drop of CA to act as a clamp, because there's no way you can hold this on there real well, then also I glued it at 2 points. I glued it against the chest as well as the hands. Otherwise, a little flick will take it right off.
Wait, go back to that. What are you using for dye? What's the coloring?
I'm using Chromacraft. Some of it, it comes with about 10% shellac, which dries real fast. I like it. Some of them I applied directly out of the bottle. Others I sprayed. I used a technique that Colin Way from Axminster, he demonstrated this. This is a Erzgebirge, Germany design, the Ore Mountain region. So I didn't create the design. And the one on the right, I mixed several dyes, and they're different woods, so they had different underlying colors.
So these are translucent dyes. They're not paints.
Yeah, they're not paints. No, they're dyes. Somebody described the difference between if a stain, if you sized it up, a particle of stain might be the size of a basketball, but a particle of dye might be the size of a BB. I don't know if that's exactly right, but
I think that's pretty close to true.
Yeah.
How'd you do the texture on the gifts?
I used a couple of different texturing tools. The one in the middle, I used the knurling tool, Wagner style tool. Actually, mine was a Ron Brown's Best. And then the one on the left, I used the Sorby mini spiraling system.
Mike, those dowels, they're round. You did not flatten the end of the dowel where the gift is?
I did. Thank you for asking. Yes, I did flatten the hands, and I flattened the bottom because when I turn these little things, there's a little nib on them. So what I did was I glued a piece of 120 grit paper to a piece of MDF, so it'd be perfectly flat. So it was very easy to flatten small parts without losing the tips of your fingers on a belt sander. Same thing with the heads, I used a belt sander, but then I kind of touched them up on a flat board. Nice. And then we did some, somebody had some pictures of some birdhouse ornaments. The thing I'd want to show on these, people ask, where do you get the little birds? Well, you turn them out of wood, and they're not that hard. The trick is, again, going back to that other picture with the CA glue being very brittle on a very small glue surface. The trick here is you have a piece of very thin moldable craft wire. It's less than 1/16 of an inch, and it just moves around your hand, very easy to bend. And on the lathe, when you're turning the head and the body, you drill a stopped hole in the head and a through hole for the body, and then you put that little piece of wire through it. And instead of trying to fasten it to a perch, which really won't hold it when you pack and unpack because they flick off, that's been my experience, you just drill a tiny little hole, cut that wire short with a drop of CA and put that wire into the hole, and then you got a very stable base. The wings of these things, I had some scraps, so I'm not a big segment. I don't do segmentation work, but I glued up some scraps of walnut to some lighter colored wood, so when you turn the body, you'd have these dark wings.
How long do you think that red's going to persist?
Not too terribly. Not too terribly long if it's in the window. If you're packing it up, using it on a Christmas tree, mostly at night, once a year, probably a long time. But what I've done on larger items is I've actually gone back in with a paintbrush and touched it up with red dye. And because of the uneven surfaces, it's very easy to paint by numbers, so to speak, and match that color close enough. And then you've got pretty much something that's UV.
Isn't there any finish that will keep it from UV fading it?
Yeah, dye generally, if you get a quality dye, some dyes are better than others. You need to pick one that's rated with pretty good quality for the UV. And
This
then
is not,
this is a close up of one of those birds with the wings out of that laminated walnut with a lighter wood. And that's all I got.
that wasn't box elder wood on
The red, yes, the one with the red in it was box elder.
What my question was, is there any way to keep the natural color of box elder from going away over time?
No. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you keep it away from the light, but just like you go into a lot of museums where they have low levels of light, no photography, all that's to prevent ultraviolet damage to various things. And box elder will definitely wash out in a few years. If you leave it in a window, I don't know how long. It's not going to last long.
Oh, the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Is no, yeah. Okay, I only have a few minutes left, but I'm going to go to Ernie, who we haven't heard from in quite a while. You guys who we may leave on the table, we'll put you at the front of the queue next week if you show up, because we do hold this thing to 1 hour, because that's we just do. Anyhow, Ernie, what do you got?
Well, mine is real quick. My article on calabash bowls, I got my copy of the magazine last Friday, and the companion video to that has gone live. And it is my interview with Emilio Arkeville in Hawaii, who gives some fascinating details on the history of Hawaiian bowls. And it's just absolutely a great interview. And I will send you, John, the link to YouTube. It is unlisted on YouTube. You have to go in through a link. You can also get it through my YouTube channel or Rockler's Woodworkers Journal.
Send me the link and I'll put it out in the follow-up along with our own video, which will be tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Okay. Is that it from you? Any questions for Ernie? Okay. I'm going to slide in one more. I'm going to, Michael, I'm going to skip you this week and go to Donald Smith, because I know he's coming in from England and we got time zone issues and everything else. So go for it, Donald. What do you have?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I know it's only morning out there, but Christmas crackers.
Do they crack?
They do indeed. They're a Russian fit. Do you know a Russian fit? No answers? It's a pop-off. Instead of a French one, which is the Lautrec. Just going back on one of your colleagues on off-center turning.
That's very good.
Very nice.
Nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Almost looks like an Amish hat.
One other there, which is not off-center, that's just turned.
What wood was that? What wood was that one?
This one?
Yep.
This is spalted beech.
Oh, spalted beech. Okay.
Spalted beech.
Very nice.
That's a nice piece, but the hat really sets it off.
Yeah, the hat's
Very
good.
nice.
Very good hat.
We got we need to hear the pop again.
Yeah.
That pop.
Post that one more time.
Pop off.
Love it.
Very good.
That's
I've
great.
got to make one of those. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
I made 24 of them for Christmas.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
Just one other little thing. I made this little box 20 years ago. And every part of it, the lid is threaded. There is a little flower, which is threaded, and even the piece in the middle is threaded as well. So small.
Okay, well, that's something we'd like you to demo sometime, is how to do threads like that.
Long time ago. Everything is on there is actually threaded.
It's amazing work.
You chase the threads, John?
Chased by hand, yes.
That's a skill I learned.
It's pink ivory and white ivory.
Lift it up. We can't see it. There you go.
Very nice.
Wow, beautiful.
Very nice.
Long time ago.
Well, it's great work. Well, we're coming up on the hour, so I'm going to say, Michael Gibson, okay, will you be able to lead off for us next week?
Okay.
That'd be great. For anyone who hasn't looked at the chat before we check out, please do. There's a detailed message in the chat from our resident infectious disease doc, Dr. Judy Stone, about masking and what you ought to or should be doing these days. It's quite detailed, but anyway, check it in the chat. It's down there. And on that note, everybody, we're right on the hour, and I'm going to say thank you very much for another fun time with Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour. We're here every week, 10 o'clock.
Wood shop. Thank God